Now it's time to gear up as we move on to our next panel discussion on the topic personalized nutrition for mental wellness, navigating individual variations. Did you know what you eat affects your mood and mental health? Kind of like that old saying, you are what you eat, right? That's right. It's time we nourish not just our bodies, but also our minds for a happier and healthier life. And of course, we know this, right? We read about it, it's all over the internet. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper and get a little bit more specific in this next panel. Get ready to discover how simple dietary adjustments can lead to significant improvements in overall well being of an individual with our session's moderator. Please welcome Anna Panito, founder and executive director of Whole Mind Symphony. Woohoo! Come on up. And she will be introducing our next expert panelists as well. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Um, I have two wonderful colleague panelists here with me, and that's going to be Lori. Is Lori there? And Tracy Oser. All right. So I just want to give a little intro to this panel. And number one, I'm going to ask you, do you all think that food is life? Yes?
Oh,
Food is
yeah.
life? Okay. Have you ever thought that food is death as well? We're going to be discussing here with these wonderful people um, why this epidemic that is going on with mental illness in the country, why is this happening? You know, we never had so many suicides happening. And now what worries me is children. And why? Why is this happening? And it's not only about social media, okay? So we're going to be discussing here today types of diet and also the the different factors that contribute to life or death. Okay, so I'm going to pass for people to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their work. Okay, so
Thank you so much, Anna.
maybe
I
don't
think I'm okay coming through okay?
okay.
So nice to be here with you talking about personalized nutrition for mental wellness. So I'm a mind body medicine practitioner, a functional medicine practitioner. I'm a coach, an integrated wellness coach, speaker, and a teacher, and a yogi as well. I'm a practitioner and a teacher. Woo, got yogis out there. Wonderful. Some downward dog later on to digest my food, right? So, my work is really in many ways personal, and it was catalyzed by a childhood of diverse or adversity and a diverse array of traumatizing experiences. And that really, by way of upregulating my epigenome, and not the best way, kind of set me on a track of having multiple challenges related to food, everything from an eating disorder, autoimmunity, many stress related disorders, and food either exacerbated that or it healed it. And so food is medicine or poison, as Anna says. And I help people to use food as a part of an overall kind of mind, brain, body network based approach. So we're really looking at inputs throughout the whole system. It's a systems biology perspective. Everything from the nervous system, as well as the food, all of the inputs that we're putting in, I help people to choose options that help them upregulate health genes instead of disease genes.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Tracy Ozer, and I do not work specifically in nutrition. What I do is I'm a business owner. who focuses solely on bereavement due to suicide loss. And I lost my own daughter 17 years ago to suicide. And in my journey, I've worked with many different people who've also had their own losses. And what I've found is nutrition is important as we are going through our grieving process. And as people are healing, if we aren't taking care of our bodies, we aren't going to improve our mental health so that we can come out of that grief healthy and effectively. So I'm just excited to be on this panel and share, what I've found for the people I work with as a coach, um, what has worked as far as nutrition and mind and gut health and how it all ties together.
Okay, my name is Ana Penido, and I have a nonprofit called Whole Mind Symphony. And why did I have to create this nonprofit? Before this life and health, I was a filmmaker. It's like, what happens is that 14 years ago, my first son was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I didn't know what was that about. It's like, what? He looks like he's on drugs, but the drug that never ends, day after day is called psychosis. And I worked with him for 4 years, and because we have a very good relationship, um, he achieved a lot of progress, and also because I found the right specialists, the right doctors who believe in holistic. I was especially looking for that because that's what I believe in. I believe that food heals, and of course, the whole support, the therapeutic support, and many other factors. It's not one size fits all because 4 years later, my second son also developed schizophrenia. And is yes, the genes run in the family, right? Um, some people in my mother's side of the family had either schizophrenia or bipolar, like distant cousins. But, it gets triggered by street drugs. There's a lot of scientific studies about that showing that now. Which brings back to the responsibility that other industries have when they are out there announcing cannabis, and there's absolutely no warning that this can trigger mental illness. But after that, and the mental health system is so broken, that I said, how I'm going to get to heal my sons. My first son got healed with a combination of factors, and especially with food, with nutrition, and we started with like um, whole foods, away from processed foods, and some labs and some things showed that he was sensitive to other things. So we started eliminating things that showed in the labs that he was sensitive to. And another factor is that most people with mental illness have a deficiency of folate. And that we did like a gene exam, a gene lab to find out about that. And he slowly, by looking at the labs and understanding, he himself started thinking, I'm going to eliminate gluten, I'm going to eliminate dairy. And what he was doing in his own contact with himself is like finding more connection between what you eat and how you feel. What is your mood or what it triggers on you? We do things so mindless. And so I can say with honor that today my oldest son has been totally recovered. 5 years on a vegan diet, gluten free, dairy free, soy free, and any allergen free and sugar free. Big one, because some people think about vegan and they eat a lot of sugar. That doesn't work. Sugar is a real big killer. Um, and so, what happened with my second son, which I thought I'm going to apply the same ideas that I have and what I learned from practice in these 13 years. And especially the deficiency of niacin, which is also something that happens a lot with people with schizophrenia. And it was not improving him. And I was like, why is this not improving him? Also, his response to medication was not as fast as my older son. So, what I'm saying is that everybody has a different metabolism. And my youngest son is conserved, and he has for 10 years been inside an institution. And that's why I created this nonprofit, because my hope is to create a home, because people don't need to be in institutions or jails. And they can go through hospitals for a crisis period, but then how they're going to heal long term. And they need a home to heal, and this home needs to be holistic and give them the right nutrition so you can lower the amount of medication when people get that balance back. And that's what happens with my oldest son. Today, my son has a dose of psychotic, less than child's dose. Okay, and he's on um, a lifestyle with meditation, exercise, nutrition, doing work that he wants. He lives independently. He has a girlfriend, and this is all possible because he's focusing on his self-care. My youngest son, he's been in an institution for 10 years. What happened to him, which freaked me out? He developed fatty liver disease. Why? Because that's what happens. That's a side effect of long-term medication, mostly antipsychotics. Well, he's going to need those antipsychotics, right? But how do you balance the other thing? I went nuts looking for the solution. It says my son's going to die of cirrhosis before he dies from mental illness. And, I cannot take him out of the institution, because he needs 24/7 care. So how do I get what he needs inside an institution? So I went to look for doctors, and I got a clinical nutritionist, and she said he would do better on a low carb, low sugar diet. And so I said, "Can you write a prescription, please?" And she says, "What? This is ridiculous." And I says, "He's inside an institution." She says, "Oh, I get that." So she wrote, and I went there, and they were implementing the low carb, low sugar diet. And in just 5 months, my son lost 30 pounds, got rid of the fatty liver disease, and started thinking better. I also asked the psychiatrist to eliminate olanzapine, which was the drug that was causing, and try something different. So today he's in clozapine and doing a low carb diet, low sugar diet, and he's a different person. He's close to being close to the level of discharge. He still will need to go to a home because all the other places that they offer for step downs are places where people can get addicted because they have no supervision. So drugs come in and people are, when you think about people who with have developmental disorder, they have homes that have 24/7 care. People with Alzheimer's, it's something you have to live with all your life, but you need the support to be able to um, recover, and recover you can. So I'm going to let my make questions to my panelists here, and we're going to dive into this much deeper. So, Lori, how might the use of wearables and lab testing support personalized nutrition planning for mental wellness?
Yeah. Boy, have things changed in the past just 3 to 5 years around technology, wearables, and the lab markers, the biomarkers that we can access to personalize our dietary patterns. So it's a data informed decision making process. How many of you have an Apple Watch on? Yeah, right. Or use some type of a fitness tracker We're able to eavesdrop into our neurophysiology and what's going on with our metabolism so that we can be really lean into precision medicine. If we don't know, if somebody's coming in with a mood disorder and we don't know that their vitamin D levels are suboptimal, we could be missing just a really easy piece of their treatment protocol, right? Also, just looking at omega-3 fatty acids, doing a really comprehensive blood panel, and oftentimes times these panels can be missing some key markers that we need to be looking at. Um, Paying attention to what she just described in decreasing the glucose load is actually managing inflammation. So looking at inflammatory markers, because we now understand through the gut-brain axis and the impact of the microbiota that depression and anxiety are rooted often in escalated inflammation. And so managing those cytokines, that are released from the standard American diet, for example, which is highly inflammatory with all the processed foods. So taking a look at some key biomarkers, and we don't even, I really have appreciated Dr. Mark Hyman has released a functionhealth.com where it's democratizing our ability to do our own lab work. And so I actually do my lab work through him. Many of my clients do as well. And he has over 100 biomarkers that we can take a look at so that we can be precise with what we're going to do with our dietary patterns. And not just our food, our dietary patterns are also our thought and our emotional diet as well, because those can upregulate inflammatory markers also. So, and even if you don't do something with over 100 biomarkers, just looking at some key magnesium levels is another example, right? For depression and even anxiety. And sometimes just adjusting these in a tiny way, either getting it through the food or some type of supplementation, can be incredibly empowering for clients and just help them to feel like, oh, okay, I can actually do something on my own. And one of the things that I do is to I just use these judiciously, or if people really want to go down the rabbit hole, then we can go down the rabbit hole. But I think looking at a few key markers is so valuable. For other markers that I look at is the composition of the microbiota. So using some microbiome testing as well, because there could be one of the key markers that I look at when I'm looking at some gut testing is something called lipopolysaccharides. That's your LPS levels. And if that is elevated, then your risk for depression, anxiety, brain fog, cognitive decline, those types of things, neurological disorders are you're much more at risk for those. So that's a key marker I look at, but I also look at other things going on with the composition of the microbiota. And then a couple of other pieces of technology or wearables, data that I have found super useful for me and my clients is continuous glucose monitoring. And now we have athletes that are doing this, right. Let me take a look at what is elevating my postprandial glucose response. And we know from the literature now, there's a lot of literature indicating that this is really connected to life and health span, how often you're spiking those glucose levels. So that can be super empowering for clients to know if I eat this, which I could eat a bowl of rice, and my postprandial glucose response is very different than what Tracy's is, right? That's the precision. And that's all connected to my metabolic pathways, my epigenome, what's going on with the composition of my microbiota. So looking at those markers can be incredibly powerful. I think there's two key markers that are most important to look at. One is what's going on with your glucose, and the second is your heart rate variability. And so I've been doing heart rate variability monitoring and training now for 10, 15, 20 years, really. Just having my clients utilize this more because we know that vagal tone is impacted. Your sympathetic and your parasympathetic branches of your autonomic nervous system are impacted by food and pretty quickly. And so I use an aura ring. This is the common thing that many of my clients use for looking at heart rate variability. I also use something from Heart Math called an inner balance to do HRV training, but they can also see what's going on in their autonomic nervous system. For example, if they just ate a half of a pizza and maybe a six pack of beer the night before, they can see what happened with their heart rate variability the next day, which can be incredibly powerful for them. So, just using our own personalized data because we just don't have the same metabolism, epigenome, or physiological responses to food is, I think, some where we're headed with it in a good use of the technology, a conscious use of the technology. And I'm really helping people to become conscious operators of their nervous systems and their pathways and their neurotransmitters because we can as humans. And having this data, being able to eavesdrop in on the nervous system and the metabolic pathways is incredibly powerful.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Tracy, what happens when one is not eating properly when going through grief, and what diet do you recommend?
So when I lost my daughter to suicide, what I tell people is your whole world, understandably, shifts upside down. And so if you talk to any suicide loss survivor, they will tell you, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, I'm not taking care of myself because I just flat out don't care. I don't care what happens to me. This whole part of my existence has just been ripped away from me. So to approach a suicide loss survivor and say, "Oh, you need to eat and you need to drink your water and make sure you're doing that," um, they're probably going to get really angry with you and say some really choice things. Um, the point is that we need a support system. Like what these ladies are doing is wonderful in what they're able to share. But if you have someone who's going through complex trauma, not only do they probably not care at that moment, but they also they're not thinking on a level of this is what I should do. And so my purpose for joining this panel was to say nutrition is important and we want to encourage people, but we also have to meet people where they are and we have to help them to understand that we're going to support them through this and get to a point where we can work back towards proper nutrition and proper lifestyle eventually. And so I like what you guys said about how we're not a one size fits all. We're all individual human beings. We all have good intentions, right? But how many of you say, "Oh, I'm going to start a new diet next week and I'm going to eat better," and then you go out the next week and you eat pasta and lasagna and pizza, and I do it. Um, it's true, right? So when we're looking at grief, what grief does is it takes your chemical in your brain, your chemicals in your brain, and just blow them up, right? And so therefore that affects our ability to think and our ability to process. And what we need more work done on a sympathetic, compassionate end to say, you know what, I know you're not there yet where you need to eat healthy and get more nutrition back into your system, but let me go alongside you and work with you and get there. Because once they reach that point of coming out of brain fog and coming out of despair and thinking that their own life should be over as well, then I send people to, people like Lori and people like Anna to then break that down. But with grief, we need to look at the fact that nothing is normal and it may not be normal for an extended period of time. With suicide loss, it's complex. It is, like I said, devastating. And it's not I'm going to go to a funeral and then I'm going to process that and then I'm going to go back to work and I'm going to go back to my life. It doesn't work that way. Right now, the average of suicide loss survivors is 135 per one loss. So you have one person who dies, 135 people are affected in one degree or another. And then you look at the national statistics, of 20,000 plus per year, multiply that out, we have hundreds of thousands of people who are affected. And that, again, affects their ability to make proper nutritional choices. There's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Daniel Amen, who I've been following a lot this past year, and he does brain scans on people that have different, traumas, different issues going on to see how their brain was impacted. Well, when you talk about loss, now you have biomarkers that are going up and down like they didn't before, and the way we've treated that is to send someone to therapy, which is, therapy's great, but we send them to therapy and then the therapist prescribes a medication, some kind of, psychotic drug, and says, go take this and we'll check on you. So we're trying to band-aid the situation. And so as far as diets go with someone who has had this traumatic loss, first of all, we don't even talk about that for the first 6 months to a year. But we sit with them and we hand them a glass of water and we say, please drink this. You'll thank me later. But we need to come at it from a more compassionate standpoint to actually get people to a healthier outcome.
Yeah, I want to compliment what you said because it's so hard to change when you come from a culture that when you go out there, what do you see? What are our children are looking at those billboards and commercials? It's all about eat fast, eat processed. Look at this beautiful label. We know there's a huge agenda with the food industry. Actually, I found out that the FDA removed the dyes from the pills that we take in drugs, but not they let it be in the cereal box and everything else. So what is FDA really doing that is not protecting the food? And where's this merge of the food industry with the health industry, and so the idea of when somebody comes from a culture, there's also an emotional connection to a certain food. And well, the Indian culture is great because they got turmeric, and we know that's a big anti-inflammatory that helps. But in the United States, there is another culture of don't make this a big deal. Your meal is just, you don't even think about it. You just swallow it and go back to work because the focus here is to be productive, and productivity means success. And when you go back to preparing your own food, especially fresh food, there is a meditation moment there where you're cutting, you're getting in contact with nature, you're cutting in contact with those nutrients that will serve you, and you talk to your food. I don't know if you guys do, but it's like when you eat, you just say, this is going to help my liver, this is going to help my blood circulate better, and you are paying attention to what you prepare. And of course, fresh food is better, much better than processed food. But the other aspect that we live in the society here that's very individualistic, people don't sit together, they don't socialize when they eat. And so the idea of me creating this home is because to implement a diet, for people to say, okay, I'm going to take that, is so much easier when the group is doing it. So my idea, especially with people with serious mental illness, is that in this home, we're going to start with the latest cutting edge study, which is ketogenic diet, which has over 2023 and 24, more than 2,000 studies proving that ketogenic diet helps mental health. It can reduce symptoms and obviously reduces weight, changes the metabolism, and in some case there's remission, which is something like I got totally hopeful with the situation. But how I'm going to get my son to eat a ketogenic diet if the person next to him inside a hospital or whatever is eating a pizza uh, with carbs and the wrong flour? So when you have a home, and I think that's the future of mental health America is not like put people in huge places, but have small homes where they can have these diets and a trained staff encouraging, and everybody's getting the same. And so there's this education and culture being developed of, wow, let's be in this together. So I'd like you to explain a little more about the ketogenic and how that helps change the metabolism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to comment on what you said, Anna. I'm just so impressed with the work that you're doing. But this idea of who cares what's on your plate? Like just eat, right? And not realizing that food is a set of instructions. Food is code, and it's sending powerful signals to our cells at a cellular level. 11 million people a year die from food. It's the number one killer. Global Burden of Disease Study 2019. This is not something we don't want to be paying attention to. Talk about an epidemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
11 million people a
Mm-hmm.
year.
Yep.
So, one of the benefits of a ketogenic diet, and again, I do believe in tailoring. Sometimes it has to be, you have to even modify the ketogenic diet. There may be times when you have to make modifications based on, just taking a precision medicine approach. But ketogenic diet is powerful for, eh, by the way, 85-90% of the population has metabolic issues. So it's really helpful for improving metabolic health and creating that flexibility between being glucose dependent and fat dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And we need more of that. That's going to create more physiological reserve, which is going to help us to be healthier in the face of pathogens and viruses and things like that as well. But being able to get down the spikes in the glucose is also anti-inflammatory. So the anti-inflammatory components, because I do like a ketogenic Mediterranean mix, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The anti-inflammatory benefits are fast, really fast. Also, the changes in the microbiome from a ketogenic diet. Now, you don't necessarily want to stay in ketosis, not everybody, all the time, right? Nutritional ketosis, I should say. But I intermittently go in and out of that to help with my gut health and my inflammatory levels, always watching those. The carb load and the refined processed sugars that we're taking in. They're in everything. It's so challenging. It's so difficult, you know.
And nobody's questioning it. I
Right.
mean, I mean, imagine the change that would be in just costs, and health if all the hospitals adopted a low carb, low sugar diet, for instance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just that it, people wouldn't be inside a hospital so long.
Right. And well, and what, it disturbs me. What feeds tumors? Sugar. And I just had a family member die of cancer. I go into the hospital, and the amount of sugar offered to her was, it was just disturbing and alarming. So we've got to start putting these worlds together, healthcare and food, and really, seeing it from a network or a systems perspective, that every input coming into this network is impacting the outputs, right? The central nervous system is not separate from the autonomic nervous system and below the body and the gut. It's all integrated.
Yeah.
And we know that the gut has connections by way of the vagus to the emotional centers of the brain, the limbic center, and is impacting the health of the amygdala, and also our learning centers and centers for cognition, the prefrontal cortex. And so, being able to engage in impulse control around food is going to be impacted by how much sugar that you're intaking, right? And what are your inflammation levels? And we know sugar is one of the most inflammatory things that we can put on our body, particularly when it's paired with a lot of protein. We see that, um, those. Um, those burnt sugars that are causing so much inflammation and ages. Maybe you've heard of those, the ages, that are upregulating the aging response. So neurological disorders, Alzheimer's is now labeled as often as type 3 diabetes. So we have a real challenge on our hand. I do think it's a crisis and it needs some attention. So
Yeah,
thank you, Ann.
the good news is that some doctors, because you know that this is not taught in medical school, the amount of nutrition classes they have is minimum, right? So most doctors don't get that information. So when you go to a doctor with a chronic illness and they prescribe you the medication, they say, what should I eat, doctor? Oh, eat anything. No, no, it's not like that, right? But right now it's changing. I have the good news that we're starting in Harvard Medical School. Um, there's a doctor who started a whole thing about nutrition with mental health, and we have these metabolic clinic psychiatry with Dr. Chris Palmer in Harvard, and also in Stanford, Dr. Shabani Sethi. And she's also very interested in supporting our residents in our home because she's starting in 2025 a study with ketogenic for 150 people. So the studies are starting to be bigger. And like Lori said, it's not that everybody needs ketogenic. My oldest son is doing well with a vegan, right? With reduction, with the elimination of all this. Some Mediterranean is good. And some people don't have a problem with grains. Other people do. My youngest son, yes. So I'm going to go to another question for us to start wrapping. But the question here is, what are the top 3 things you recommend as changes in dietary habits to shift one's health faster? Tracy.
So obviously water. We preach water all the time. Good water, not flavored water, not carbonated water, just water. Um, and again, I say it comes back to supporting the people you know. If you know they're struggling, walk alongside them, hand them the water. But we need to look at, when we're looking at grief, particularly, not only do we have people that just don't eat because they're sad, we have the people that overeat, right? So they'll sit there and they'll down bags of potato chips because it will make them feel better because of the different chemicals in their system. And we really need to, as we see that behavior happening, we need to ask the questions and we need to let those people explain, why did you need that whole bag of Cheetos? Um, and then we need to listen to them and we need to have constructive conversations with them because I think, as a whole, we need to be able to share, right? We're human. We want to share what's going on with us. We spend too much time internalizing what we're feeling and not um, getting the help we need. So it's important to support each other and help out each other through those processes.
So beautiful. Thank you, Tracy. I would say the first thing is know your power. Encoded in our DNA is the ability to consciously regulate ourselves. But we have to practice. We have to practice our diet. What are we intaking? What are we thinking? Thoughts become things in the body. They become chemistry. Emotions are molecules. We know this from Dr. Candace Pert's work um, at the National Institutes of Health. That this is our thoughts and our emotions are neurochemically altering us and rewiring our nervous systems, and can be in a way away from resiliency instead of towards resiliency. So know that what you produce endogenously, pharmaceutical wise, is way more powerful than any exogenous substances that you can take in. We have the ability to regulate our neurotransmitters. One of the best ways that we can do this when we're talking about food is really decreasing the processed foods. So, and I would say eliminating ultra
I
processed.
would go for eliminating.
Eliminating, yeah. You buy a can of tomatoes, it's processed in some way,
Right,
right? But you
right.
you you hope there's not a bunch of other crap in it, right? And so really eating a whole foods diet, anti-inflammatory whole foods diet. That would be one of the best ways that you can manage that inflammatory response. And then I would say next up, move. Move. Sitting is the new smoking. Move. We have got to dislodge the emotional patterning from all of the collective traumas that we've had, individual stress and traumas. That has to be dislodged. It's getting trapped in our fascia, that connective tissue that holds everything together. That's becoming rigid. Some of my clients say I can't touch my toes anymore, and I'm like, that's not just because of age. That has to do with inflammation. What's going on with your fascia? Move, move, move. Find something that works for you. Walking, dancing, swimming, whatever it might do, yoga, it doesn't matter. Move your body. And then sleep hygiene. Incredible, incredible active recovery tool. And one of the best ways to take care of the part of your brain that's going to help you stay connected in community and to make good, wise, healthy decisions. One of the reasons why it's hard to stick with these New Year's resolutions because some of the damage to our prefrontal cortex going on right now. It's kind of offline because of all of the stressors and the highly inflammatory diet that we're eating. So sleep and moving, managing the inflammation, and know your power. I think that was four, maybe. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. The more the merrier. So, my take is education. I think that people need to learn and understand what they are eating and what is how impactful is in. So, the good news, only do this once a year. I'm doing a course with my beautiful son who has recovered, and it's going to be in May, 4 classes once a week for an hour. The first one will be teaching you how to write a food and mood diary, because if you don't understand what you eat impacts you and the feelings that you have. So just being aware of what you're eating is the first step, right? And we also talk about labs and about um, how to read labels and how to detect these things from your cabinet and throw out the foods that are killing you and start bringing fresh foods to your table. And how do you do that? It's not going to take forever. I have very good, easy recipes that I'm going to teach for all different cultures. And then the other classes will be one totally about anxiety, the foods that reduce anxiety, and also the lifestyle, like you said. It's all about changing your lifestyle, right? And going into exercise, meditation, gratitude, volunteering, and feeling good about your life, what you're doing, and not worrying so much about yourself. You know, when you go out there for others, you are making a big benefit to yourself. And the third class will be about depression, how to eliminate um, the symptoms of depression, which you can do. And I don't know if you guys know, but you know, there's a study with a herb called saffron. And saffron has the same effect as Prozac. They made a study, but it doesn't have the side effects. Plus, it helps you lose weight. So it's just so amazing that there are alternatives out there to reduce depression. Omega 3, like you said, super important. And the last would be about psychosis. And we're going to be talking about the gut brain because that's the microbiome. And the more you eat fermented foods, you know, and include in your plate fresh, colorful veggies and fruits, you'll get better very fast. So if you guys want to know, I have some flyers and I can distribute to you. And I hope you all can do it. It's an online class. And I my nonprofit, I am located in Los Angeles. So anybody you know, who's in town and wants to invite, because we can do this not only online, but we can do it for organizations, we can do for hospitals, we can teach mental health professionals or health professionals in general all these very easy things that you can change in your day-to-day diet and meal planning and come to a real vibrant life. That's what we're here for. We're here to have energy every day and feel good about living. You know, last words, Tracy.
Wow. I've learned so much from you guys in the last 24 hours. It's not even funny. So follow these guys because they're awesome. Um, just mirroring what I said before. be good to each other, realize that people need people, realize that there's people among you that you may not know are struggling or just need you to say, hi, how are you doing? It's good to see you today. Just simple little comments go a long way. Um, Real quick, there's a gentleman named Kevin Hines who tried to end his life 20 years ago. And he tells the story about he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and he lived. He's like one of the 0.2% that ever survived that. And he speaks on his recovery and he says that if he would have been on the bus that day going down to the bridge and just one person would have said, how are you?
Mm.
He would have stopped.
Mm.
And that was his, negotiation basically with himself. If one person asks me how I'm doing, then I'll know that's a sign that I should be here. And nobody did. And thus, his story. So it's really important that we connect with other people. And I know that has nothing to do with nutrition.
No,
But I just wanted to
have a meal with
sure
another person
have a
is
meal
fun
with another person and just,
and talk
today,
about it. Yeah,
right? Today, this week,
relax.
you're meeting new people here in the conference. Find somebody and just say, hey, can I, share a meal with you? And that might be something they need that day to get to the next day.
Actually, it has a lot to do if you know about the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, autonomic nervous system. It's activated when we're in community and we get social support. And that is how we digest our food. Many of us are running around in fight or flight response and disconnected and feeling socially isolated. And we don't even produce the digestive enzymes or the hydrochloric acid that we need to digest our food and get the nutrients out of it. So being in community actually
Mm-hmm.
does help us use the food as medicine because it stimulates the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system in the vagal tone.
Yeah,
So it is connected, Tracy. It's all
There you go.
interconnected. Yes.
and it's important. Um, um, it's important to also remember that some people live in the same house. We gave a lecture once at UCLA. A student came to me and says, I live with my mom, my dad, my grandmother, and my brother. We all eat separately in different hours because our time doesn't go, and we are either looking at the TV or the phone. And I said, and what do you eat? Well, she says, well, we whatever, it's there. It's just like, and I says, what if you prepare something and invite everybody for a meal on Saturday? And she says, oh, I don't think that. I say, try it and call me because it's important to have an accountability partner when you're starting something. And so she did call me. She says, I can't believe it. They all sat down and they ate and we talked, and it changed the dynamics of the family. And the isolation is not good. And food is a big merger, and so many cultures have this of sitting together, eating, and taking 1 hour to eat and have a talk. It's so important. So, anybody has a question? We have time for one
We
question.
do.
Yeah. Okay.
In front. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I think, with suicide loss and your aunt, she's probably feeling guilty. She's probably feeling some shame. Thus, she doesn't feel worthy of even being healthy. So it's about, and with your clients, it's about reminding people that you're important, your life is important. You want to stay healthy, and have them find that thing within themselves, right, that keeps them going. And I would just emphasize that to them.
Actually, it's very similar to what Tracy's saying. I was going to say, I think your lowest hanging fruit is connected to purpose. Help her to find the why. We can tell everybody what to do, give advice, give solutions, but sometimes that actually just increases their cortisol levels, you know. People want to be able to find, you know, what is my meaning, what is my purpose? Why would I want to like have more energy? Why would I want to sleep better, feel better? What would be the reasons to be able to get down on the floor with my grandchildren or whatever? I really help people to dig deep and find out, even to explore their purpose. Like, what are you doing here? Why are you in this earth suit? Why do you get up out of bed every day? That's incredibly um, uh, game shifting, even from a neurochemical level. There is a happiness trifecta that happens whenever we connect to our purpose and what drives us every day. But even the reason why she might want to make changes to her food in her diet could be helpful, and maybe you know, helping her to start really, really tiny, really small, because it can be overwhelming for people. I think getting people to change their dietary patterns is sometimes more challenging than if you wanted them to change their religion. Like it's like
And if
so.
you're already in an
Yeah.
overwhelmed spot,
And then if you're already, yeah, stress driven.
And I was,
Hmm.
I took my oldest son, the first, he was in psychotic. And I took him to a nutritionist, you know, and the first one, he says, I don't want to work with that person. Okay, so I'm going to try the second one. I tried the second one. And she was smart because he came over psychotic to talk to her. She wanted to make questions. She just says, what do you like to eat? She didn't start imposing all the knowledge that she had. She had patience. And I think patience and respect is a big one when you're trying to connect with any human being, you know. So he was into potatoes. He wanted to eat potatoes the whole day, you know. And she says, that's fine. That's fine. You know, and next time he would come back and he was curious because she didn't push. He says, well, do you have anything else that I can eat? She says, avocados. They'll go great with potatoes. So she knew he needed the healthy fats for his
Right.
brain and not the carbs. And then he says, okay. And slowly he started getting trust in that person. He loves her. And just like building his whole plate in a different manner, even when he was psychotic. That's what I'm saying. You can connect to people,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That is so important. Thank you for your question.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we go. We're done.
Well done.
I didn't bring the clocks I watched, so I don't.
Good.